Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is a speaker, author, and ministry leader, Mr. Ahmard Vital. How you doing today, Ahmad?
I'm great, Ryan. Thank you for having me on today, man.
Hey, I'm kind of excited here, getting to talk with another athlete who talks about mindset and all that. I mean, I'm kind of interested to see where this goes.
Let's do it.
Hey, number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Ahmad Vital?
Man, it depends on what day of the week you ask that. And we can go many different ways, but I mean, at the core, man, I'm a young man from a small town in Texas called New Caney. It's grown a lot since I left there, but at the time, not many people knew where it was. But I'm basically a young man from a small Texas town who had a dream, man, and the greatest thing that I believe that was ever given to me outside of the word of God, I would think would be my pen. This is the blessing that God gave me to be able to communicate through the means of the pen, the pad, and being able to share words, share the written word with a many of people. And so, whereas you listed off that, I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I'm a ministry leader. Everything starts right here with my pen. If you look to the left of me, if the camera could pan around, you will see that there's a spiral notebook and a legal pad right here next to me. There's 4 or 5 composition books to the left of me. There's 75 of them on my bookshelf right over there, ready to go for when it's time for me to write my next book or just do something productive. So for me, at the core, I'm a writer, and so everything springs from that, from the fact of me putting pen to pad and preparing for everything I do through starting with writing. So I would say that my foundation outside of being a child of God is going to be the fact that I love putting a pen to pad and being able to express myself through that medium.
Yeah. So do you just write what in journal every day, or just like whenever that you feel something, just write things down? Do you write goals in there? Gratitude journal? What is it?
I'll be honest, I haven't written as much probably in the last year or so. Life has sort of happened to me. Some things happened within the family with my father and mother who are both in their 70s. And so I've been a little bit derailed. I've been canceled a couple times for some things. And it's been kind of like, it's been a little bit of a rough season. But I can tell you right now, for me, there are notepads and composition books all over this house. When a vision comes to me, when a thought comes to me, I'm writing it down. There's a pad that sits next to my nightstand right now. So, like you said, when stuff comes to mind, I'll think of a chapter for a book. I'll think of a title for a book. I'll think of something I want to share with my teenagers when I get back to church. I'll think about something that when I go into the next meeting, like I want something to share. Like thoughts and ideas are just poured into me all the time, and I just have to express them via pen to pad. And so thoughts just come to me, man. And I like to be able to capture as many of them as possible. And one of these days, I'm going to take all of these notebooks. It's probably no lie. There's probably 30 notebooks around here with writings, partial books that are sitting around here. Not to mention all the stuff all the documents that are in my Dropbox right now. There's just there's poems, there's chapters, there's strategies, there's all sorts of things. And one of these days, I'll probably just turn it over to somebody and say, "Hey, why don't you? I haven't read this in years. Go siphon through this and see if we have something." So I have a ton of writing out there that I need to do something with. I probably can have 6 books within the next 2 years if I wanted.
Yeah, that's pretty good skill to have, though. I mean, not too many of us can sit there and just write. I'm not one of them.
I can tell you without question, Ryan, if tomorrow, just out of nowhere, I have some long lost uncle who's like, you know what, I left you in my will. Here's $12 million. I will stop almost everything I'm doing right now, and I will wake up every morning with one of these in my hand and just write all day long. That's what I would do. That's what life would look like for me if I had the opportunity.
Nice. You played college football. Can you tell our listeners what type of mindset and training it took to get there?
Yeah, man. I actually was. I was obviously a 3 sport athlete in high school, and I had opportunities to go to college via scholarship, but my opportunities fell apart when I got into one too many discipline issues in high school. And so that really derailed a lot of things. But when I went to Stephen F. Austin, I went and I walked onto the football team, and 28 of us tried out, and 2 of us made the team. And I was one of those 2. And I just remember, even before I was able to join the team or even put myself in position to join the team, I would be in the same wellness center in the same weight room where all the football players were. I remember Jeremiah Trotter. I remember Michael Ricks. I remember those guys working out in there and looking at these guys who are just beasts of an athlete. I mean, I think Trotter played almost a decade, if not
Yeah.
longer.
And he was a big dude. He was a
Oh,
big dude.
man, when I first got to school and I saw that guy on the where you do the ab work where you like throw the medicine ball.
Yeah.
First of all, that was the first time I seen a medicine ball that large. That medicine ball was like the size of like an oversized kickball. It was about this big. And I think it weighed 15, 20 pounds. This dude is doing ab work and he's throwing it probably about 10 yards and I was just like, oh my goodness. And so I'm going through and I'm doing all the workouts and I got myself in really good shape. And I made the football team. I was on the scout team. I traveled. I played in a couple of games. We won conference that year, so I still have a conference championship ring. But the mindset is that coming from a small town in Texas, man, we just really live by leaving it all on the field, meaning leaving nothing to chance. Meaning if I go out there and I lose, I'm not going to lose knowing that I didn't give everything. It just meant that it wasn't my day. And there was a better competitor on the other side. Maybe he was bigger, stronger, faster, whatever that is, or maybe just the ball bounced in their favor. I don't make excuses for it. But the thing is, I never wanted to leave the field not knowing that I gave everything. Meaning I left completely exhausted, like a tired dog. I've given everything I have to this moment. And so that's what I would share with someone is that don't leave anything. There's nothing left to be needed in the tank. If you play on a good football team and you exhaust everything, you'll have more than a few people who will help carry you off the field if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
But I like to make sure to empty my tank every time I'm doing something. And I've taken that same mindset into working even now today.
Yeah, I think that's one of the traits that's missing in a lot of high school sports and athletes. They kind of, I've been in quite a few different practice rooms and watched games and different sports, and just they don't understand that the way you train is the way you're going to compete.
Mm-hmm. And I think that everyone's, and it's probably a lot to do with, we've done a good job in being able to civilize the world and be able to be more efficient. But there's some things you can't substitute. You can't there's not a faster way to get done in the weight room per se, right? Like you still need to be able to go in there and do what needs to be done. Like there's not a shortcut for this. You can't AI yourself to a stronger bench press, right? You can't use the internet to be able to simply just run faster by reading something. You have to go out and do it. But I think, Ryan, the main thing is that I think somewhere between my generation and the generation behind me, which would be millennials, somewhere in that time, we lost the ability to accept that failure is part of success.
Yeah.
And so if you're scared to fail, then that means you're scared to do the things that can lead you to success, but you need the failure to drive you to be better in preparation so that you can see success. And we're always trying to find a shortcut. I mean, we have microwave ovens. I mean, you can heat something up in 4 minutes, right? I came up at a time when you had to use a conventional oven and it just took more time. But now because everything is so quick, everything is so popcorn and microwave and do something in, meals in 12 minutes or less. That ends up being an embedded mindset that cuts away the delayed gratification. It cuts away the strength of breaking down your muscles to become stronger and just continuing to just grind things out and knowing that this is a year-long process to prepare you for the ultimate season, which can be 10, 12, or 15 games. when you're going into high school or college football. And so I think we need to get back to the idea of just the original grind, the original accepting the fact that failure is what leads to more success for you in the long run.
Yeah, that's the resilience part right there is huge in any sport or any goal you have. Why do you think so many people are afraid of failure?
Because their ego is in the way. They look at it like people will look at failure like it's permanent, or not realizing that we just don't have things figured out the first time. And again, sometimes you just go against a competitor who's better than you, right? I remember there was a team I used to run against in high school. I believe, and I'll say the name. It was a group out of Jasper, Texas. Jasper for the longest time had the fastest 4x100 meter relay. I think it was 39.9. It was from like the early 90s or late 80s. I couldn't remember what time it was, but I remember I think that was the first time that a high school team had broken the 40 second barrier in the 4x1. And that record stayed around for forever. Well, that tradition of having fast guys in that city went on for a long time. And my junior and senior year, no, my sophomore and junior year, they were in our conference. And so here was the deal. I was a pretty fast athlete, but let's just say they have 7 athletes on the other side. 1 or 2 of them, I'm faster than them. 3 or 4 were about in the same speed range. And there's 2 dudes, I'm not touching them on my best day. It just was. Like, they are just stronger. They're faster. They get out the blocks better. Like, me maxing out, giving everything I have, perfect start, perfect speed, win factor, everything. There was 2 guys on that team in the 100-meter dash who would beat me almost every time I stepped onto the track. Was it because I didn't train hard enough? No. They are more skilled and just better and faster than me in this particular race. And sometimes when you think that like you're always supposed to come out on top, you get discouraged. And so taking a loss, you think that like there's something wrong with you. And it's like, no, sometimes, I mean, it just happens. I mean, think about how we thought about Peyton Manning until he won his first one.
Yeah.
Like he was winning all those games. Dan Marino still
He'll win the big one.
He still has passing records back at a time when they didn't even pass very much. They were running the football. And to this day, Dan Marino is one of the greatest, but he couldn't win that game. Does that take anything away from his greatness? I don't think it does. The dude's still awesome. But it's just when people look at that, is they only measure success on, I don't want to say worldly accomplishments, but it's like you have to reach this pinnacle. And it's like there's success many ways along the way. Yes, getting the ring, getting a Super Bowl, getting a gold medal, those things are awesome. And you want to get to them. But there's a lot of awesome and greats within the sports who don't reach that.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that. But I think because of, this taking away the slow cooking and the slow building of something great, we think that like it's all or nothing. And I just don't subscribe to that, because if you subscribe to that, you'll live a pretty miserable life if you don't get the trophy, you don't get the medal, and you'll think that you're not a success, when in actuality you are, because you continue to give your best, and you have pushed beyond the limits of what you can do in your life. And yes, you do want to win, but if you don't win, it does not mean that you're like the ultimate loser either.
Yeah. How did you get into scouting?
Well, I mean, I've been sports writing since I was 14 years old. And so I was the editor of my school newspaper, and it was always weird to write about sporting events I was actually in. That was a little awkward, because even if I had the best game, I'm not writing myself into the article.
Yeah.
So, but I did a lot of sports writing coming up, and obviously I majored in journalism when I went to college, and then when I left college, I went to work with the largest community newspaper chain that was in my area, and it was not in my area, but it was in the Houston area, and so I started sports writing for one community, and I covered news in another community because both of those papers kind of came together and worked together from the standpoint of a geographical area out here in the West Houston area, and so me doing that for so many years, I was obsessed with sports writing. But along the way, I started learning about the recruiting process. Like I'm writing about guys, who are going to Stanford, going to USC, going to Texas, going to Ohio State, going to Oklahoma. And I kind of fell in love with it. I was like, man, this is awesome. I want to know more about this process. And so I joined an organization. Back then, it would have been Texas Prep Extra. That would have been under the Scout.com Fox Sports umbrella back then. And I was just in it, man, because it was a way to cover football, but looking at it through the lens of there's a number of colleges who want this young man and want them to go to this college and these things. And so I got to cover the process of guys going through that, so much to the point that my second job when I left the community newspaper was to join a startup company where we helped young men get college scholarships to go to school. And so I'm writing about it. I'm actually going through the process. I'm scouting videos. I'm in touch with coaches. And so it was just an awesome process to go through all of that. And even to this day, there's a part of me who still wants to go back to it. And I still have, it's funny because like the organization I came up in, that company is broken into many pieces. So my colleagues are at multiple different outlets. So I could get back in pretty soon. I still do a little bit of stuff with a magazine down here called Dave Campbell's Texas Football, which is probably one of the most read magazines in the state of Texas because it covers every football team played in the state of Texas. And the last I checked, Texas is not a small state.
No.
And so it's a huge book. It's known. It's widely purchased every year, and it's guys open it up, and it's a big deal. And you're looking through and seeing who's coming back for certain teams, who's projected to be top in different divisions, and it's just a beautiful thing, man. And that's, I would say, as far as writing is concerned, writing about athletes, writing about ballers, writing about football players is probably closest to my heart. And then, other forms of writing is important as well. But me writing about ballers is sort of like me breathing and drinking water.
Watching all that talent, what was some of the traits and intangibles you look for that would tell you if they were going to be successful or not at the next level?
Mental toughness would probably be at the top of it. And what I didn't know what to call it at the time, but I know what it is now, but it's servant leadership. Most of the guys I watched were at the top of their game. Andrew Luck, Russell Shepard, Michael Thomas, a number of guys across the state, across the country, just amazing football players. But most of them knew how talented they were, yet they didn't flaunt how good they were. When they step on most of the guys I just mentioned, when they stepped on the field, they knew they were out of 22 guys on the field, they were the best. And if not, they were 1A, 1B with somebody else who's a top player. So if those two were on the field at the same time, but they always looked out for the good of the team. As great as they were always looking to make sure not only did the team win, but as they began getting better in their craft and they had already had their scholarship offers, or maybe they had already chosen what school they're going to go to, they wanted to make sure their teammates ate too. So they would give them opportunities to be able to run the football, be able to catch some passes, to be able to do amazing things like setting them up to win too, so that they can go to college possibly and be able to play at the collegiate level as well. A lot of the guys I studied for my book, Awaken the Baller Within, most of them were not the look at me, arrogant type of athlete. And I use Russell Shepard a lot because to me, at the time when I was covering him, he probably was one of the most humbled superstars I've ever saw in my life. Like when he would score a touchdown, he would just take the ball and hand it back to the ref. And then he would come back and celebrate with his teammates. It wasn't ever pointing at the other crowd. It never was. I mean, and this guy was just making, 5, 6, 7 dudes miss per play whenever he was running the football. But he never showed him up. And I remember interviewing him, and I was like, you always were pretty, humbled about when, you did amazing things on the football field. And I was like, I'm trying to understand, because a lot of athletes, they'll get in guys' faces and all stuff like that. He's like, well, Ahmard, I've done what I needed to do to make a good play. They're probably already embarrassed enough. Why do I need to do more? And I was like, wow, that's a very mature thing to say. And obviously it's helped him in his professional life, because right now he runs a large and successful waste management company here in the greater Houston area, and is doing amazing work over there. And so it's understandable that he's a great husband and a great family man and a great father and a great business and entrepreneur, because the mindset he took going into college, which propelled him to the NFL, played around 10 years, and now he's in the real world running a $1 million plus business. That's where do you think that comes from? Why? See, once we understand the mindset, whether it's an athlete, whether it's a scientist, or whoever it is, once we understand the mindset, and the mindset is to serve others, to be courteous, to help those out who are in need, that tends to carry on in other areas of people's lives, and they seem to see success in many different ways. And I think that we need to recognize those types of traits, and I did that many times over. And so that healthy mindset, that servant mindset, that placing yourself under others to serve them and honor them in the way to be able to empower them to do better for themselves, is a great trait. And I wish more athletes had that type of mindset.
Yeah, that's a good mindset to have right there. Putting others ahead of yourself. What led you to write your first book, Awaken the Baller Within?
Well, obviously the fact that I've been writing so long before, but when I wrote Awaken the Baller Within, I was obviously a sports writer at the time. That's when I was kind of in the prime of my recruiting work with those guys. But I also went through a pretty bad relationship breakup that I, in my heart, thought that was going to lead to marriage at the time. And I had just, in fact, the house I'm in right now, recording this video, I had just bought this house around the time when that separation happened, and it broke me, because I had put a lot into that relationship. I was looking forward to that to being the foundation for my life going forward. I believe I was in my early 30s, no, late 20s, early 30s, somewhere in that. It's kind of a blur up to this point, but it fell apart about a week or two into me buying this home. I bought this house when I was 29 years old. And so I was ready to move forward. And I just remember just going into a great deal of depression. And I hadn't known anything about depression up to that point, but I guess that was the first time I sort of leaned in on a relationship, and it kind of broke me. And I just remember just having some very negative and destructive thoughts in the room to the right of me. And I was crushed. And I just remember having days and days where I wasn't eating, I wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of here. And I just remember one day I had one of those dark, deep conversations with God. And I was like, I'm not really doing this thing called life very well. So how about this? If you wake me up tomorrow, I'll try to do things your way, since my way clearly does not work. Of course, I'm here. So I woke up, and I just remember going into a great deal of personal and spiritual development. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. You go into reading the books, the big ones, Who Moved My Cheese, Think and Grow Rich, Inspired Destiny, How to Win Friends and Influence People, all the books, like the top 10, business books that we are, most of us read as adults. And I also wanted to do some spiritual development. So I hired a mentor. I brought somebody on to help me read the Bible better, I started going back to church and all of these different things, man. But here it is, I'm a writer, I'm a sports guy. And so I wanted to write a book about kind of my experiences, but how do you take sports and personal and spiritual development and bring them two together in a marriage? So what I did was I basically did what Napoleon Hill did to write Think and Grow Rich. He went and interviewed successful people, millionaires during that time. I think that had been during the 20s, right? And it was around that time, and he was, Carnegie had wrote him all the letters to be able to go and interview these people who were awesome in business and awesome in different areas of life. I did the same thing. I just did it with college football players. And so all the guys I'd been covering all through those years, when they would leave to go to college, when they would come home, like let's just say they leave and, it's the fall, it's their freshman year, I would get them as they come back after their first year, and I would interview them. I had questions on leadership. I had questions on preparation. I had all those different things. And I interviewed, man, close to 100 guys just to get what the understanding was and how they were able to make it through all those different things. And, I wrote Awaken the Baller Within. I don't think there's a chapter more than 15 pages. It's big print, short chapters, because I didn't like to read in high school. So I'm assuming all the other ballers didn't either. So I wanted to write a book to where they could get through it pretty quickly. And so Awaken the Baller Within was the first one where I my first published book. I put my heart into that, and I did a lot of research around it. And I learned so much about, the mindset of successful athletes. And what ended up happening, Ryan, is that as I was writing that book, a lot of parents were connecting with me because I'm talking to their kids on a regular basis doing recruiting updates. And so a lot of parents bought the book. What would happen is that the book would come in while the kid is at school. And so the parents would open it up, and a lot of them would write me back and say, Ahmard, this book isn't about football. I was like, no, football's the metaphor. It's a book about life. It's a book about a mindset. And I'm saying, these football players, this is what they told me about how they deal with sports, how they deal with weight room, how they deal with conditioning, how they deal with adversity, how they deal with discipline, how they interact with their coaches. And then you realize, there were guys calling me saying, I'm a better lawyer because of this. I'm a better realtor because of this. I'm a better teacher because of this. And some even said, I'm a better parent because of this. I'm like, book went a little bit beyond football, but it's written in jock-like language because I'm a jock.
Yeah.
And of course, I've grown a lot since then. I'm, a little bit more intelligent than when I first wrote that book, but I realized that book was a foundational pillar. And to this day, there's still people who talk about that book and talk about how that it really catapulted the way some people who were around me at the time were thinking, and how they could look at life differently because there were so many different profound principles that were within it.
Well, yeah, there's so much that you learn from sports and just being able to compete. And the ones that do it at a high level, their mindset has to be dialed in, or else they won't make it to that next level.
No, and you don't exceed at anything if you're too emotional, too in your feelings, too much in your head, as opposed to just being more rational. See, the thing that makes a lot of people successful is that you do things even though you don't feel like it, or it's not comfortable to do it, but it's the best thing to do. We as men have to make those kind of crazy decisions all the time. Like, this is not going to be great, but it is the best thing for my family. It's the best thing for my coworkers. It's the best thing for my employees. And we have to make those kind of tough decisions, but we realize that we all need to be making those types of tough decisions. And, I think that, discipline, camaraderie, teamwork, overcoming adversity, all those things, man, sports teach you so much. And, I share with a lot of the parents, if there's an opportunity, I say, when your kids are younger, even if you think they're a little, awkward, 2 left feet, don't seem to have any talent, put them in sports anyway until it comes a point that you're just like, okay, this is not for you. Because for some of them, it's not about the sport. It's about the practice. It's about the accountability. It's about the discipline. It's about the honor and authority. It's about taking orders. It's about not you. It's about a team. It's about everyone coming together. It's about you decreasing it and to be able to help someone else. It's about looking at the dynamics of a team and saying, okay, maybe I'm not good here, but I'm better over here. And you being willing to step away from what you think you can do and go to where the team can utilize you better. Right. I obviously I've always been pretty quick. I've been, pretty talented in so many ways, but there were times when coaches needed me to do something that I thought was a little bit outside the bounds of what my talent was. But that's where they needed me. And so I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn how to do this better. And so I think that there's so much that comes from sports being a metaphor for life that it's a great thing. And I wish more parents would give their kids the opportunity to be able to go out and compete and be able to be a part of something that takes their own ego out of it and realize you're part of a bigger collective and you're looking to serve your brother to the right, to the left, and to the right of you. When you put them first, meaning that you step away from what's good for you and you do what's good for the team. And I think that that can extend well beyond sports. I think that that can be used in the workplace. It can be used in our homes. It can be used at the job. It can be used in our government. It can be used in our churches, our schools, all of these places. We have to step away from this thing called life is all about me. That was the biggest transformation that ever happened to me, is that I realized, I'm like, wait a minute. It's not about you. It's not about you at all. But it's about how many people's lives can you make better? How about we wake up like that? Could you think about that? Let's just say we just flip the script and we just snap and just everyone is just out of nowhere, just altruistic and just looking every day to serve the needs of their fellow man. God, what would we look like?
The world would be a lot better place.
Your community, everything around you would be awesome because we're fighting to do for one another. Can you imagine that? like
instead of kicking somebody down to step on them just to get over them,
dude. I mean, everybody's running. The whole door's open. Everyone's running to see if they can help someone in a particular situation. But I think in small pockets, if we can influence, a couple of people around us to wake up with that type of mindset, to wake up with that kind of heart posture, it's possible. It won't be 100%, but we don't need 100%. We just need the tipping point, right? 12, 15%. It'll start a movement. It'll start a wave. We know how it works. Doesn't take long for anything to pick up steam. And I think there's enough of us to begin that movement, starting with moments just like this.
Yeah. How did you know that you wanted to help teens and young adults?
It seemed like everything in my life that I was doing always led to young people and young adults. I was a sports writer in high school, went to college, worked at the Boys and Girls Club in college. I worked at a sports bar and some other places as well. I was a substitute teacher in college. I graduated from college, and what do? I go back and cover news and sports at a place. So who am I covering? Teenagers. I leave that job and go work for a startup company to help young men and young ladies get college scholarships. Once again, we're back in that teenage young adult range. I leave that to go do college football recruiting work. So now I'm dealing with college students and high school students again. I write a book, and the first place I go speak is to a football team in high school. And then I'm traveling all over the place, going to different schools, going to sports camps. Then I rededicated my life to Christ. And where do I join? Youth ministry. So now I'm back with teenagers again. I'm back with young adults. And I'm in my 40s now, and that's the demographic I deal with a lot. I speak at small businesses. I speak at nonprofits. I speak at colleges. But colleges, young adults too.
Yeah.
So 85% of what I do is pouring into the next generation. And in my late 30s, I realized that. And then I realized that perhaps God called me to that demographic. And I started really thinking and praying on that heavily. I'm like, God, is this where you want me to be? And there's been enough signs. You know, I've been on 5 mission trips already. And it's pretty clear that there's a heart posture I have for future generations. And I don't know, Ryan, maybe I don't want to say it's guilt, but I think my heart is softened for them because I see so much in them that I didn't represent when I was a teenager. I was the epitome of your dumb jock. I came up in the night. We didn't care. A lot of my guys, we didn't care about school. I just wanted a grade good enough to be able to play ball. I didn't care about education. I didn't care about getting good grades. It didn't matter to me. I wanted to write, get C's and D's, and play ball. That's it. But now I got students who are, you know, close to being valedictorians and salutatorians, and they're in National Honor Society. They're skipping grades. You know, they're graduating from high school at 16 years old, and I see them and I love what they're doing, and I'm honored that they see me as their leader, even though most of my life I've been completely reckless. But I believe that recklessness is what led me to be able to have such a heart for them, because it's like, hey, why don't you be the example to show them what can happen and undo and show them something different from the way you did things? To be an example on the good side of where you are on the other side of it, and on the side of, hey, I've done the drinking, I've done the smoking, I've done the partying, I've done the doing whatever you want, road trips at 3 o'clock in the morning. I've done them all. Here's what you probably shouldn't do. None of those. And so I think that I'm called to minister to that very thing. I'm still coming into that, but I'm almost certain that my job is to make sure that I stay prayed up, make sure that I stay reading the word at a very consistently, so that when I go in and see my teenagers, that I can say, hey, here's what I want to share with you. And I give them the game so that they can go ahead and have the life that I should have had at a younger age, for them to go into it with a more level head and have the conviction to do things in a right and particular way.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, working with youth is definitely a calling. I'm very good at it. Like I coach and everything, and people are like, "Man, you're pretty good at this," and other people like are not good at it. I'm like, dude, I don't find this very difficult, and they're like, I can't communicate with them at all, but you can. It's like I just take it from like what you said. I've been down that road. I want to try to steer you away from the stupid stuff I used to do, and give you that good path to set you up for success.
Completely agree, Ryan. And it is a particular heart posture, because, and you know what I heard recently, and I didn't know this was the case, but they say, you know, it's not, aside from coaching, like when it comes to like youth ministry and kind of youth groups and things like that, it's like, you know, there's not a lot of men in that genre. And I guess I never thought about it, but you know, men tend to, you know, work with men who are older in age or whatever. But it's like I get a little bit of a revival being around my young people, because I'm seeing some of the things that they're doing, and they're just they minister, and they lean in, and they help one another, and they love in a way that I didn't see when I was younger. They're bold and mighty and unapologetic in their faith, and being respectful and being honorable to their not only to their peers but to their elders. And man, when I see that, I'm just like, you can have it all, right? Because it's like I have a bunch of nieces and nephews and children whom I can help set on a pathway that will lead them to better results than I can be. And and really that's where my heart is that for all the young men, especially the young men I work with, like I want them to be far more successful than I can ever be in my lifetime. I want them to surpass me in every category they can. Because to me, that's what a good father is supposed to do. That's what a good mentor is supposed to do. That's what that's what discipleship is all about. You want them to go be great, right? You don't want them to just get by. You want them to be awesome. You want them to be awesome fathers and awesome husbands and awesome, community leaders. We need more of that. Society has lied to young men and young women and thinking that, you know, gender roles are, sexist and we, we all equally do all of the same things. And it's like, no, we don't. No, we don't. We are all called to something different to do. And the way we've done things for many years has worked. And now we're just going to just change the game in the third quarter? For what? And so that like you, Ryan, and I honor you for having a heart for these young men who are pouring into you, and I'm sure they're getting a lot of wisdom from you from that. And I know that I'd imagine you come home with a level of satisfaction, knowing that it's not about you getting the satisfaction, but you come home and think that today was a good day. I saw something in one of my students that makes me proud to know that he's progressing and moving forward and doing some great and amazing things. And I know that you probably smile at yourself a little bit, on your way home from the work you're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely really rewarding at times. Other times it's not so much when you got to deal with a little bit of the chaos, but it's you face the difficulties so you can get to the glory. What are the three components you teach in your programs?
What are the what?
The three components you teach in your programs?
Well, that I've sort of changed things up since my newest book came out, and I focus more on a 5-point plan at this point in time, coming through now. What? And those 5 points are identify, justify, identify, justify, specify, quantify, and magnify. And these three things need to go into your decision making when you're talking about making goals. When you set those goals up, it's like, okay, what do you want? You identify what is it that you want. You identify it, and then once you make the goal, why? What's the why? You need to have a justification for it, because it's not enough to just state a goal. If you don't put a why behind it, then it's just kind of a thing. It's like saying you want a pair of shoes. Why? Oh, well, I just want them. Well, that's not enough. So you have to put a why around it. You have to justify it. And then you need to specify. Be specific. Like, oh, I just want a new pair of shoes. Well, what kind of shoes do you want? You want Nikes? You want Adidas? You want Vans? What do you want? What color do you want them in? And I know I'm making a loose comparison to shoes or whatever, but most people wear shoes. And I'm sure most people's goals aren't shoes, but just to kind of just understand and wrap it up in that standpoint. So you want to specify. Then you want to quantify. I mean, yes, to quantify, like how much of it do you want? Do you want one pair of shoes? Do you want 10 pair of shoes? And and you just kind of look at it from that standpoint, because you always want to have a mark, right? Like when people say, "Oh, I want more money." Well, how much more money do you want? 10K, 5K, 100K? You need to know. Because if you went into the office of your boss and was just like, I really want more money, and your boss is like, all right, I'm going to pay you a dime more per hour, you might be like, well, I don't know if I was thinking about that. Well, you didn't quantify what you wanted the raise to be. But you have to basically do those types of things to understand it. And the last one is to magnify, because a lot of times we try to make, when we were talking about being safe earlier, we make safe goals. Oh, I'll be okay with just this. And the fact that you said I'll be okay with, let you know that you're not pushing it to the
Yeah.
max. And so magnifying it is saying, okay, like let's just say I make a goal and say I want to do 3 speaking engagements a month. Me magnifying it would say, let's shoot for 5 and be grateful to hit 3. You get where we're going. So it's like you set for 3 and you get 1. Well, falling a little bit short. And so it's got a little bit of Grant Cardone slid in there where it's just like, his thing is 10x everything. I mean, you can go 10x if you want to. I'm more of just maybe a double of what your goal is. Just kind of just double it a little bit and then kind of see what the work ethic is going to take to be able to reach there. But I think when we're setting course to what we want to do in our lives, I think we need to have a system that goes around it so that we can be able to best put ourselves in position. And then in addition to that, and I actually just did this about an hour or two ago. I just finished my 15-month goal planning. I didn't want to wait till the end of the year to do goal planning. My heart was burning to just get it done now. And so I basically made a 15-month plan, and we'll reassess probably in January and see if those still hold. But what I did is I did all of my goals in all 7 areas of life. And I had 2 to 3 goals for each of them. And I put a scripture at the end of each of the goals I wanted, so that I can know that as I'm going for these goals, that they're tied to something bigger than myself. It's tied to the word of God. It's tied biblically, so that I know that it's a righteous thing that I'm doing. It's a moral thing that I'm doing. That this is looked upon favorably as I push through and do that. And so I just handed my goals to a man I disciple under right now. And I told him, I was like, here's my goals. This is all of them here. Look it over. See if I have any blind spots. See if I'm missing something. See if I need to adjust or change something. And then you let me know. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And so that's a very important part and component as well. Not only those 5, but also to have somebody close to you who can hold you accountable for that what you say you want.
Yeah, you definitely need somebody to hold you accountable to get there, because like you said, we all have blind spots.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we're human, and we're going to, even if we're very intentional, we're still going to find ourselves making an excuse here or there. It's just what we're
Yeah.
we're just, yeah. Well, I got this going on. Like even right now, like things were going on with my family or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, okay, welcome to life, Ahmard. Get it together, And so I'm having those internal dialogues. You've set goals before, and you're looking at them, and they're just like, they seem so massive and so big, and you're just like, and so
The scarier the better, though.
Yeah, and you're pulling yourself left and right, and you're just like, man, how about I just share this with somebody who can see this and not be crazy? just be like, it's not really that serious. Hey, if you adjust this and try this and devote this much time for this, you can get this done. And you're just like, oh, great, thanks for that. But you're too in the forest. You're too in the thick of things. You're too in the valley. You're too in your head of trying to overthink all of this, when it's just like, you can just do this and feel this out and then do that and then hire somebody to do that. It's like, I've been sitting here for a week trying to figure this out, and in 42 seconds you just figured it all out for me. Thanks. But that's what we need. That's what we need in our lives. And the sooner we realize we can't do life alone, it's going to be a great thing for all of us.
Yeah. What got you into motivational speaking with everything you got going on? What made you decide, hey, I'm going to go down this path and become a keynote speaker, public speaker, and start motivational speaking?
Really, it was because of, I had a mentor, and I wrote Awaken the Baller Within. And I remember after I wrote it and my copies came in, and I was like, hey man, I got this book. What do I do? And he's like, well, if you want to sell a book, you speak on it. I was like, oh, okay, that's what you do? Cool. And so I started, and that's when I went to one of the coaches I know down here in the Houston area. I think he's still at the same school. He bought 80 copies of my book. And I mean, you got to remember, like, I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. like selling 80 copies of my book. I'm just like, oh man, this is awesome. And so I was like, so I went and spoke to his team, and I just remember the first time doing a keynote. My goodness, I mean, I'm in front of all these guys. I'm looking at notes. I'm trying to like figure it all out. I had no clue what I was doing. And but that actually wasn't my first paid keynote. My first paid keynote was a coach who had he had a football camp out of town. It was in East Texas. Very, very high, heavy hotbed of athletes come out of the East Texas area. And so he was doing a football camp down there because he was working in Houston, but his hometown was in East Texas. And so he hired me to come speak at his football camp. And he paid me $300. And I was just like, okay. Like, you know, I mean, $300 to me, that was the first time somebody cut me a check. And he's like, I'll advance you $150. I'm just like, yes, I get to hold on to $150. And so they paid for my hotel and everything. And I remember I was getting it together. I was engaged at the time, and my fiance and I were driving down. And while I was on my way down, he was calling me, and he was like, hey man, don't come. Don't come down here, man. And I was just like, wow. I was like, I'm packed up. I've taken off work. We're speaking. And he's like, well, I didn't get the numbers that I thought I was going to get for the football camp. And I was like, well, man, hey, we'll speak to whomever is there. And he's like, all right. And so I get there. I go to the camp the next day, and I pull up in the park, and it's pretty bare. And, you know, there's coaches all around. I think there's about 7 or 8 coaches. But there were only 2 football players who showed up. And I remember, and he was just like, man, you know, you don't have to speak if you don't want to. I was like, I'm speaking to him. And mind you, these young men were like, you know, they were kind of closed off. They didn't really have much to say. It was 2 middle school football players on a park bench in Tyler, Texas. There were more coaches and parents watching than there were athletes. But I went through my entire speech, spoke to those young men, and it hit me some years later, because 3 or 4 years later, I was hired in the same city to speak, but to a whole crowd of athletes from all over that region. And I remember when I got done, I probably spoke to, because it was a select camp, so it wasn't a ton of guys there because they were selected specifically for his camp. I think it was probably somewhere between 75 and 100 guys. But while I was in town, I remember going out to that park, and I remember doing a video, and I was like, my speaking career started right here on a park bench to 2 middle school athletes for $300. And then it dawned on me, because by the time that I went back and did that, I'd been overseas. I've spoken in corporations. I've spoken to major nonprofits. I've spoken to, at that time, probably 10, 15 high schools, 3 or 4 colleges. And I just looked back at that time, and it was like, you know, if I would have just looked at what you were speaking about earlier, if I'd have just been like, okay, so there's only 2 guys there, I'm not going to bring my fastball. I'm not going to bring my. What type of precedent would that have set as I'm going to, and I'm speaking at a graduation?
Yeah.
I'm speaking at a teacher's conference. I'm speaking at a coach's convention. I'm speaking to a college for teachers in service. So every professor and teacher is in the room. But if I didn't treat the least, these 2 young men on a park bench, if I wouldn't have given it my all, if I wouldn't have continued prepping, that can follow you into things that are actually much larger. And so that mindset stays with me to this day, as I think about those 2 young men on a park bench, and I say, I came from that place and I'm going somewhere else, but I will never forget how important that keynote was before anything else.
Yeah. Amazing. How can people get a hold of you?
Ahmard Vital, man, the name on there. I mean, this basically every social media platform I have, everything I have. The first name, last name.com is my website. They can reach me there. They can reach me on Instagram and Facebook. I haven't been as active lately, but I'm still able to be found there. People can send me messages over. I'd love to hear from the Through the Fire audience out there. There's a lot of people out there with young boys and girls in the house, and so I definitely want to be someone who can pour to them if the opportunity is there. The way they can best support would be to buy my newest book, Now What? 5 Steps to Get Up and Create the Most of Life. The big 5 of planning and the big 5 of goals, that is actually in the book. And it basically just takes you on a strategy to be able to get yourself from one place that you're trying to go to an entirely different place. And it gives you the steps at every turn on how to use a particular strategy to get there. And there's multiple ones in there. You could choose whichever one works best for you. But the best way they can support would be to go pick up a copy of Now What, the newest book I had that came out in 2023.
Awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I just want to encourage everyone to wake up every morning and give thanks and be grateful for the opportunity to live life. And I want people to increase their giving, increase their serving. Go hug your father and mother if they're still here. Go tell brothers, sisters, siblings, coworkers, or whomever is in your life. Tell them you love them at some point throughout the week. I think when we start doing little things that seem like little things and stepping outside of ourselves and giving more of ourselves, loving more of others, honoring those who are in our lives for a particular reason, I just think that life will get better for you. I think that when you wake up, and whatever your morning process is, if you look to say, instead of what am I going to go out and get, change those words to whom can I serve and how can I give, your life will immediately change. You can trust that, because your heart is leaning in a place of being a leader in serving others and not so much thinking about yourself. And when we can lessen ourselves and be greater for others, that's when the true blessings can come into your life.
Great message. Okay, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Whew. Take a deep breath and go at it again. Go right back into it. Adversity is going to come, and it's what makes us stronger. And so we don't run from it, we run through it. For me and my faith, I turn my adversity over to God, to my Lord and Savior, to be able to help me get through the fire, through those different things. Because my good book said that his strength is made perfect in my weakness. And so if I'm going through adversity, obviously I'm weak and I have no clue what I'm doing. But if I lean and place my trust in him, he'll get me through that. And so that's the way I would share for somebody to get through an adverse time. That he'll bring you comfort, he'll bring you peace, but he'll also give you the wisdom and the grace to be able to push through it.
Yep, great advice right there. Well, Ahmard, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure interviewing you and getting some insight from you.
Yes, sir, Ryan. I thank you for bringing me on, and shout out to the Through the Fire podcast listeners, all the great men and women out there who are doing awesome work. Continue doing your thing, and we're here from you, giving you love all the way from the great state of Texas.
Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.